Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it's been a little bit of a while since I last actually had to do a video just to discuss the nightmarish, ludicrous, the nonsense that's been going on in the news as of late. Because to be honest, this is this whole thing is unprecedented. I literally cannot believe I'm even having to do a video like this because, oh god, the news is quite frankly in such a hysteria because Sunak's election campaign, in literally less than a week, has gone right off the edge of the face of the earth. I mean, where do we begin? First of all, what was all this news I'm hearing about a Tory minister in Northern Ireland saying that he knew literally nothing about the pledge about national service until the moment it was announced? This was apparently something that was decided at the very, not even at the last minute. It just sprung into somebody's mind and they said, Sunak, go ahead and say this. That will get you support. Unfortunately, it simply hasn't worked because outside of professionals from the army and the actual military services and all that. But once again, I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. 5 years ago, basically to this day, I applied to join the British Army right as soon as I was done with university, and I didn't get in, and that begs the question: if even what hope does Sunak have about the youth of our country joining the British Army if they're not even going to accept people who are applying of their own free will? Now, with that being said, they said it was because of medical reasons. They never specified. Well, here's an actual reconstruction of the phone call I got. That was the thing about this application. It was all done entirely over the phone for some reason. I never had to go all the way down to the barracks in Fenham and that to apply in person. But basically, it worked something like this. Ring, 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 ring. Hello? Yes, hello. We're just calling to say that your application was denied for medical reasons and we'll be terminating your account in 15 minutes. That was the entire phone call. 5 years later, and I can still remember that phone call. It was one of the briefest, but one of the most long-lasting phone calls I've ever had in my life. I know it's a little bit of an oxymoron, but if you see where I'm coming from, so it was profound. Is the word I was looking for. So, putting that aside, there was also some barbaric excuses and all that. That some people were saying about what would actually have to happen is that if you had no choice and whether or not you were already applying for the service and you had to fit in, here comes some sacrilege for you. It sounds more like South Korean national service than it does sound in something like in Great Britain. And which begs the question is that they talk about democracy and all that, but if people have no choice, then is it technically a democracy anymore? I'm not entirely sure. It's because of the hysteria and all the noise generated over the war in Ukraine. A lot of the papers, especially the Mail and Express, I think they're almost pining for the idea that Georgia or possibly even Lithuania are going to be invaded by Putin, mostly because, well, at least Georgia was at one point a very strong stronghold for the former Soviet Union, with at least over 12 statues of Stalin in their major cities. So it would probably be in Putin's interests in some way to re-establish a sort of, not so much like an Iron Curtain, more like an Iron Empire of the 21st century. But then again, whatever is decided in and out of the Kremlin is something that is only speculatory at best from the view of the West. But putting that aside for the moment right now, because people have saw through this whole charade about national service and the fact that nobody is buying it, and the fact that there's no way that Sunak can actually implement it, and there's also no way that Sunak can bring about £64 billion of tax cuts, which makes it which is borderline sounding like mini budget part 2, something that Rachel Reeves, the shadow council is Rachel Reeves the shadow cabinet for Labour, but basically she's called Sunak out for this nonsense, and well, we're probably going to be hearing a lot more about it in days to come. But what we have heard, however, is that we go from national service to and then Sunak they literally just panicked about this. State pensions. State pensions are never going to be taxed. We're gonna leave them alone. There's going to be a boost for state pensions. Yeah, that's it. That's a good selling point right there. State pensions. Imagine we literally go from one extreme all the way to the other, because I previously have stated this is what is referred to as look over there tactics, i.e. they will the news, and more importantly the Conservative Party, they're only ever going to tell you what's important when they decide that it's going to be worth it, because that's the sign of desperation. You know why it's a sign of desperation? Because outside of the fact that, again, the whole thing about national service was sprung upon the last moment, it only actually adds weight to the theory that if this was an idea that was so perfect, then why was it never implemented 3 years ago, 4 years ago, last year? Why are they only saying these things now, as though this is going to not only get Britain back off the hop and out of recession and all the rest of it, because obviously it's not going to happen. They're only saying these things because they think that's what's going to make people vote for them. It's nonsense. It's ludicrous. It's borderline propaganda. That's what this whole thing stinks of. And as I've said before, so there was a guy on the Daily Telegraph 5 days ago was explaining about how Labour's front bench was the most boring he's ever seen. But to be honest, what are you more impressed by, ladies and gentlemen? People who are desperate, or people who are obviously not desperate, who are actually, methodical and organised and know what the hell they're talking about? And that begs because at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think Sunak or anyone else has got a clue what they're talking about. Because yesterday there was a woman from the Conservative Party who was backing reform and was conveniently sacked the very day when this was brought to the news, which is just yesterday. Which is something that I don't think the news is going to want you to know, because this is going to... The Reform Party is going to be an even bigger thorn for the Conservatives before long, because the Conservatives are going to lose the majorities from basically all sides, even from those in Scotland, from the SNP, because Stephen Flynn is, well, just like Sir Keir Starmer, he is becoming an incredibly thorny problem for the Conservatives. The Reform Party is, well, the Reform Party is too small, and it's basically a more extreme and an even more outrageous version of the Conservative Party. If you think the Conservatives are unpopular, how bad do you think it's going to be for the Reform Party in a matter of weeks, when any of their policies or anything in their agendas is going to come to light? Remember, I spent nearly 90 whole minutes discussing the entirety of the Reform Party's agenda and their policies, and it's borderline sounding like an even more fascist version of Donald Trump's sort of wet dream. That's their outlook towards British politics and towards the public. And yes, you can see it for yourself, and I'm not exaggerating about stuff like that. Nigel Farage has said he was even going to throw his hat into the ring after, like, so many other big right-wingers were saying they're going to be stepping down, because they know immediately. Michael Gove even abandoned ship as well, the rat that he is. Well, what do you expect? But even Michael Gove has the foresight to know that this is a ship that is very, very speedily going down. Even in the independent parties, the Green parties and all the rest of them, the Liberal... well, I guess you could also include the Liberal Democrats as well, because, well, anything at this point other than what's going on. Because and as I've said this many, many times, ladies and gentlemen, if the current feeling of the moment, it's not exactly to be pro-Labour, but to be anti-Tory, but it's specifically to be anti-Tory. That's the feeling of the moment. And it's something that isn't necessarily going to slow down just because the Conservatives have become increasingly desperate. Desperation does not bounce with good ideas. It only bounces with even more desperate ideas. Think about it like this, ladies and gentlemen. In the first week of the election campaign, I mean, we go from national service, we go from outrageous tax cuts, we go from we're never going to tax state pensions, we're going to give them the raise as well. And also, by the way, at this point, I mean, let's say if I turned 65 tomorrow, I mean, whether or not there will even such a be a thing as state pension by the time I reach 65 in 39 years' time is a very good point, but I'll discuss that when it comes to it. What if I reach, state pension age and I literally die the very next day? What use is the state pension to me at that point? You tell me. I know it's a little bit of a very morbid thing to suggest, but, them's the point. What's the point of trying to persuade people that tomorrow is going to be better when we can't do anything to fix today? We can fix today, ladies and gentlemen. We can't fix the future. The future hasn't happened yet, and we don't know what form the future is going to take, because the future is only ever dictated by what happens right now. That's how that works. The present is dictated by what has happened in the past. The future is dictated by what happens in the present. I don't really know why I'm even saying this, because, to be honest, even now I'm getting the distinct impression nobody has ever taught anybody in the Conservatives this either. And I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I really don't know. I don't know who thought the idea of pulling an election was a good idea. It doesn't, to be honest, from Sunak's point of view, this probably doesn't sound like a good idea. From Labour's point of view, this is a great, but the only good part about this, probably from Labour's perspective, is that this literally could be the moment people have been waiting for to get rid of Sunak and get rid of 14 years of Tory government for quite a long time. And the others are going to see this, because this could literally be a doorway to leading to someone incredibly unhinged getting into power. I mean, it's not to say it hasn't happened before, because history has proven is that sometimes when things are at their very, very worst, regimes can literally sprout out of the ground. One need only look at Germany in the 1930s and the rise of Adolf Hitler, for those who know their history about Germany's massive recession following the end of the First World War, to the rise of the Nazi Party and all the rest of it. But once again, when the Prime Minister comes out of Downing Street, announces a general election in the pissing rain, stands there for 10 minutes, his suit is absolutely drenched, and he doesn't even have the foresight or the common sense to, take out an umbrella, or even just hire somebody to bring out an umbrella for him. When somebody is just willing to stand there in the rain, speaking for 10 minutes, and looks as stupid as he does, well, what were you expecting from him? I mean, look at what's happened in less than a week since the election was announced. Nothing about what the Conservatives have done have made any sense. They are completely unfundable, completely unmanageable, completely outrageous propaganda. It's not designed to convince people that they know what they're doing. They're only doing it to try and convince you that this is the way forward, and you can't really look towards anyone else. That's what all of this screams of. It doesn't scream of a party that is on your side, like the Daily Express claim. because the Daily Express only claimed that Sunak is only on the side of the pensioners. But what about the rest of the country? What about those, like I said, what about the ones who are openly wanting to join the services? Not just the army, but the RAF, the Navy, the rescue services, the police, the Coast Guard. What about them? Or what about the other ridiculous thing as well, by saying that Labour is just as bad and they have no strategy? Like four out of 10 kids are going to quit private school because of Keir's tax. By the way, guys, and here's a little lesson about life. Some people even have to leave school after they've passed exams. It's an outrage. Yeah, I'm just gonna... I might even possibly do more of these sort of like resourcing about the headlines going forward, because I'm just... Listen, I don't claim to be a smart man. I don't claim to be intelligent. I don't claim to know every single thing there is about politics inside and out. However, I know from experience can be a very harsh teacher, but it's because first comes, the lesson, second comes the moral. And the moral of this story would appear to be, I know what looks suspicious. I know what sounds bad when I hear it. And I know it looks bad when I see it. And this looks, sounds, smells pretty bad. And I don't really think it's going to improve anytime soon. So, what do you guys think? Can things get any worse for the Conservatives? Do you think before the week is over, the first week of the election campaign, because July 4th isn't particularly very long away, we're almost at the end of May, so I'd say Sunak has got... I reckon 5 more days will pass, something incredibly desperate comes out of the Conservative Party again. I think... You know what I think the Conservatives will probably do? They'll adopt the idea of net zero immigration, the policy that the Reform Party are going to do. The idea of a one in, one out idea. And when people see it, and when it's held up to the light, I reckon there's going to be such an uproar that people will be ready to scramble 10 Downing Street by that point. I don't know, but we'll wait and see. And one more thing, just before we go. You may remember a couple of, it was like 2 months ago, I personally wrote to the Prime Minister asking about why should I vote for the Conservatives? Because I personally wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth himself. Because surely he must have, surely the head, the very face of the Conservative Party should be able to tell me, somebody who is able to vote, about why I should vote for them. Needless to say, Mr. Sunak never got back in touch. And at the same time, I never would have guessed, because I don't think he knows either. So, there's that. Thank you.